for and doing bus pickups. One of the major things, I think I heard someone is here on the feasibility, the money side on why smart cities are important. The transportation has seen a savings of something like $2 million. I'm sorry, I've got some meeting information coming in here, but the transportation has seen a $2 million savings based off of, no fuel costs and reduced maintenance costs for just these team buses over the last 2 years, and they're looking to triple that that fleet from 10 to 30 by the end of 2020. Another project that we are working on, I think you mentioned something about vehicle location or tracking vehicles. This actually just started last week. It's a collaboration between transportation and a company called Streetlight Data. What that company does, it uses the same location services that we use for our weather apps and Google Maps to track and present information to transportation to help predict traffic patterns and report on crash data. With that information, they're able to determine the direction of travel, average speed, and path in and throughout the city. One of the things that really intrigued me is we would be able to report on or figure out the path that visitors are used to come into Greensboro to maybe visit one of our attractions, the Coliseum or our Natural Science Center. That they report on that data with, I think it's a 4-week lag, so you can't necessarily you can't track people around, so there's some security built into that application. One of the other things that we're working on is, I don't know whether anyone has come into Greensboro and gone to our Natural Science Center, but we've done a lot of work there over the last 2 years. Along with that, we're starting a pilot, an Ollie autonomous vehicle at that location that will shuttle people around the Greensboro Battleground Park District and bring them around and drop them off at the Natural Science Center. That pilot was supposed to start summer 2020, but we had to put that on hold right now as we take a step back and consider if there's going to be any lasting impact from the coronavirus. This shuttle is, I think, 4 or 6 passenger in public transportation at that point, and putting people in that close to each other. I don't necessarily sure how that's going to translate in our new normal, right? Can you advance to the next page? I talked about it a little bit, maybe about some of the things that came out when our school systems had to shut down during the corona outbreak. One of the major things that was a surprise to me and a lot of other people that I've talked to, about 7,000 students weren't able to continue their studies because they didn't have access to either devices or internet. One of the things that we're working on with TDI and our school systems and the university is a way to help address that a little. In conversations with our schools, our secondary education, they let us know of a process that they use, a system that they use called EduRoam. What EduRoam is designed for is to allow visiting professors or visiting students to travel to other universities and use their local credentials to gain access to the internet and be applied different policies based on those credentials. What we're looking to do is use a spinoff of EduRoam. It's called AnyRoam by the same company. That will allow us to use the credentials of the school age kids and the faculty to use their credentials to access now an additional 90 facilities, all the city's wireless facilities, giving more access to internet. That project we plan to have done by the end of this summer. It's not anything that will be so one and done. It's going to be something that will be a direct response to Corona and even last well after it. One of the things I wanted to talk about 5G. One of the things that can impact the rest of our residents that don't necessarily need the access to public Wi-Fi is going to be 5G. A while ago, we were told that Greensboro is a little bit different, and I think a little bit advanced, because we have a position in the IT department whose sole job is to work with our service providers and make their experience working with Greensboro better, help to slow down, help to speed up the time to get permitting, remove any other issues that they're having working with department for construction, anything of that like. And recently, when Greensboro was announced as one of Verizon's first 25 cities to deploy 5G, it was specifically told to us that, the fact that we have such a good relationship and kind of rolled out the red carpet for the ISPs was one of the main reasons that they chose Greensboro. And seeing some of the permitting data that they're pulling, there's going to be a huge deployment in and near that smart corridor. So it'll give another option for residents that live along that area almost immediately, and throughout Greensboro in a more of a staged approach, more options to get access to high-speed broadband, to do things like like we're doing now, remote work or remote learning. Can you forward it one more time for me, please? I think that may be my last one. Yeah. So one of the things that Greensboro holds really close is we build a lot off of our relationships. And that approach was first, I guess, ironed out when the city of Greensboro, city of High Point, city of, I'm going to forget someone. So it's Greensboro, High Point, Winston, Guilford County, and the Tri-Regional Council. We all got together and formed a group called Tri-Gig. You put a lot of IT people together and have them to name a group, and you get something like Tri-Gig. Sorry, we just don't have, it's not really good marketers. But that group actually brought a lot of shared resources together, fiber assets, building assets, and poles, access to the city poles. But what we really found that was the most beneficial was approaching something with a unified set of goals, agreeing to do things a certain way. A few of the projects that spun off from Tri-Gig, the Triad Connected Cities, is one of the things that we've talked about, dealing with one of our vendors named Segra. We're able to negotiate with them at 12 strands of dark fiber from Greensboro to Winston to connect our data centers together for just the cost of the additional handholds in that on that route. So that was, I don't want to throw a dollar amount out because I don't know how much that would have cost to run 20 miles of dark fiber for two governments to talk to each other. So that was a big win for us. And I'll end with a really quick story about how our relationships have benefited us as recent as a few weeks ago. So I know Jane's on the call, and I think it was after 5, probably 6 o'clock, I received a text from her with a link to a story that talked about some electric charging stations that are being installed in Greensboro. And her first question to me was, what do you know about this? And if you know anything about it, and how can we leverage it for, to benefit Greensboro? And honestly, I didn't know anything about it. When she sent the text to me, it was the first I heard about it. But within an hour, from the relationships that we formed here at RTCC, I was able to reach out to Susan, and she was able to put us in contact within a few hours with North Carolina Cleantech, which was the group that helped fund those installation of those the project I mentioned a bit ago. And from that, we've now started built a new relationship. And Sergey, I heard you in a moment ago. We're going to probably use North Carolina Cleantech to see if they can help us with our Leads for City project. So I guess to summarize, the way we've approached all of our smart city goals is, getting that group of people and solving a specific problem. I mean, typically IT's looked at just the wrench to solve whatever problem, but a lot of times you find yourself solving issues that aren't really problems. So our approach is, get people together to kind of focus in on something that's really bothering, really an issue that needs to be resolved, and then put all of our energy towards that. And again, thank you for letting me speak a little bit about some of the things that I've done. That we've done. I hope I haven't ran too far on time, but that's all I've got. So thanks again.
That's great. Thank you, Rodney. I hope that we can become normalish at some point and take a ride in some of those A&T autonomous shuttles. That's really exciting. I know that we are going to lose you about 3, so let me think. What I had planned was that for Emily to go ahead and present, and then after both presentations, we'd do a little Q&A. So hopefully, I'll ask it. So hopefully we'll have a little bit of time. Emily, take your time, don't rush, but after your presentation to pepper Rodney and you both with questions. So does that sound okay?
Yeah, I'll move as fast as I can.
Yep, take your time. We have a lot to learn from you too. So I'd like to introduce Emily Yates Giulioni. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, Emily, for being with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's nice. We moved from Charlotte in September of last year, so it's nice to see some familiar faces and names from my time in Charlotte. So if you want to go to the next slide. Oh.
Hold that thought. Maybe I didn't integrate your.
It's like, wait.
Talk amongst yourselves. Excuse me for one moment.
Well, I don't technically have a slide on this, but Susan asked me to talk a little bit about how we got our smart city process started. We were a bit late to the table in terms of large cities pursuing a smart city agenda. And we owe a large part of that and thanks to the Smart Cities Council, who provided us with funding in 2017 to start to pull together groups of individuals in the space in Philadelphia to start compiling what we thought a good smart city strategy would be for a city like Philadelphia. And so it took us about 2 years to develop the strategy, and it was really one of the main reasons that I was attracted to this position, which I started in October. So I haven't even been for a full year, and COVID hit about 5 months after I started, but we really hit the ground running. And so we developed a strategy that is really allows for the space to be responsive and isn't predictive. So there are a few projects that are laid out in the strategy, but it really frames how we as a city want to move forward in the smart city space. So I'm excited to talk to you a bit more about what we've been up to. So I always like to lay out my agenda. These are what Susan asked me to talk to. So for those of you not familiar with Philadelphia, I'll give you some quick bullet points on that. Talk very briefly about my journey, largely because it's atypical to how I got to this position. Talk about our strategies and guiding principles, and then some current projects that we're working on that I'm really, really excited about. And then just briefly about how COVID and even the protests have really affected the work that we're doing within our Office of Innovation and Technology and the smart city space. So you want to go to the next one? So these are just some basic facts. We are almost 6 million in population here. We're the 6th largest city in the US. We do have a strong mayor city, which I think is important after having worked in Charlotte and dealt with that weak mayor, strong council dynamic. Our median household income is $46,000. We have a large, we have a lot of universities in the area, so we have a fairly educated demographic here. And some of our key economic sectors are education, medical, leisure, and hospitality industries. My communications team would probably be upset with me for highlighting some of the negativity or the kind of the lesser points of our city, but it's important because it factors into how we are moving forward as a smart city. So we do have a high crime rate. It's increasing. I think it's pretty similar to a lot of other large cities. Something that might not be known about us, we have the largest open air opioid market here. So we have a huge opioid crisis that we're working really hard to address. We have almost a quarter of our households living at or below the federal poverty line. And that aligns, you know, I don't know if there's been studies around this, but there's probably some correlation to the fact that we have a digital divide of about 25%, where 25% of our population does not have access to technology or internet. So big challenges that we face as a city that is not necessarily wealthy. When I started here, a lot of people are like, well, we are the largest, poorest city in the United States, you know, so that's always something that we like to highlight, I guess. Next slide, please. Really briefly, I won't dive into this. This is my journey. I had to do this for a bunch of students to talk about careers in this space, and I thought I'd reuse the graphic that I created. My background is actually in landscape architecture. I graduated with a degree in that from Arizona State University. I have a unique background, I think, for a smart city director, in that a lot of my background is about city systems and urban spaces, but it's very applicable. You know, I've really been able to take everything I've learned from each of my positions, both private sector, NGO, and public sector, to help move things forward rather quickly here in Philadelphia. And you can see in 2016, I started with Envision Charlotte. Loved hearing the update with Greensboro, because I was part of the Envision America team that brought you guys in and really kind of coordinated with you. I had my own consulting group for a little while, and then I started here with the city in October of last year. Next slide. So, you know, I think while I'm on a panel, I always hate the question, what is the definition of a smart city, or what is your definition? I always think it's important to start there for how we as a city are defining it. This is the definition that we put in our smart city roadmap. But since I've started on, I've had a lot of conversations with my CIO, and we've really been working to transition that definition to more of one where our city becomes a smart city when it fosters economic growth and improves the quality of life for all of our citizens. And we achieve this by efficient management of existing resources and promoting participatory government. And so it's much more we're working to create an overarching principle within City Hall that, similar to sustainability, everybody's looking at it through a smart city lens. You can go to the next slide, please. So really quickly, in our smart city strategy, which is I think about 30 pages, very easy reading if anybody's interested in it, we as a city and kind of as an advisory committee and all the working groups felt that whatever we did had to be guided by these 4 guiding principles. Locally inspired. We are very much a city that is proud of its identity. We are not Silicon Valley, so the strategies that we deploy and the projects we deploy should not be ones that would work in Silicon Valley, but ones that work here in Philadelphia. We want to be innovative and collaborative, and most importantly, we want to assure equity within our projects, so that we're not only deploying it in our center city, but we're really thinking about those individuals and those communities that might benefit from it the most, making sure that we're able to, it's able to be utilized by everybody in our city. And next slide, please. And then we lay out these 4 kind of strategies that we're working on right now. So our first one is build a strong foundation with policy and infrastructure. That's really about governance, and that's something I've been working on since day one, is setting up our governance structure. We have 5 subcommittees that work on topic-specific issues like data, network, and security, or communications. And then we also have an advisory committee that was set up by an executive order from our mayor in February of 2019 when we launched the strategy. And an internal working group where we are working to help facilitate that collaborative, cross-departmental work that is really inherent to a successful smart city strategy. We're also working to create a process for engagement and partnerships, and I'll talk a bit more about that on the next slide through our program called Pitch and Pilot. And then last, and everybody knows this one is most important, is how are we sustaining and supporting the implementation of our projects with funding, especially given current circumstances and budget cuts. We're experiencing a $750 million shortfall in our budget this year and working really hard to find opportunities for efficiencies. Next slide, please. So really quickly, this is a very detailed slide, and hopefully because it's on your computer screen, you can see it a little bit better. But this is a program that's really the backbone of our smart city programming. We even have a person on my team who's dedicated to managing it, our Pitch and Pilot fellow. Essentially, what came out of the working groups is that there's a very disconnected approach to partnering with private sector in the city. We have what we would call shadow IT departments in each of the departments. So we have vendors going to the IT department in the streets team. We have vendors going to the sustainability team. And so it's a very inconsistent and hard to kind of know what's going on in the landscape of the city approach. And so what we wanted to do is create this very transparent mechanism about how the city can pilot technology with these vendors to address municipal challenges. So the process, which is more the right column to pilot a solution, is we work with an internal working group to identify municipal challenges based on a variety of criteria. Our first one was around helping the city reduce its waste to landfill, which is a huge topic that is highlighted in the citizen survey every year. It's one of the top 3 things that residents complain about. We open a call for solutions. We receive proposals from around the globe. It's not restricted to only Philadelphia organizations. We have a pitch event, and then we select a pilot and work to implement it. We utilize our miscellaneous purchase order, so our MPO process, which allows us to currently do contracts up to $34,000, but as of July 1st, that's shifting to $75,000. So I'm really excited at what that will allow us to do in the coming years. There's a ballot initiative in November on that. And then the goal is to, in the process of piloting, to work with them to take the data, determine if it's valuable to scale up, and then scale up within government. So really kind of trying to navigate the difficult procurement system that we have, the archaic procurement system that we have here at the city. We really haven't found many successful best practices around this. So this is our attempt while we're trying to be a bit more innovative in that process. And then on the left side, it's mostly focusing on, again, the one-off partnerships that we have with universities. We have amazing resources in our research community here, and we're really trying to more consistently engage with them and develop MOUs and create partnerships similar to like CMU has with Pittsburgh, and how that's really been able to drive their smart city platform. If you want to go to the next slide. I'm just trying to keep an eye on time too. So we are, as a city, doing kind of some of the quintessential smart city projects. Like we have a master data strategy going on. We have vehicle location on all of our city fleet vehicles. We have the big belly trash cans. We have smart water systems. So we have a lot of those kind of bigger enterprise-wide projects, I would say. But these are some of the ones that I'm working on currently that I'm pretty excited about. So the first 2 are actually the result of our first pitch and pilot. We're working with a group out of Amsterdam. They're developing an urban mining tool that looks at our construction and demolition waste stream and identifies opportunities to connect individuals to those resources, so that we're keeping resources out of our waste stream and creating new economic revenue streams as well. Retriever is a group out of New York City that has an app to allow for contactless textile and e-waste pickup, where they then dispose of it in a responsible way by providing it to refurbishers and or groups that break it down into valuable parts, so retrieving metals and whatnot. And the next 2 are actually a connection to Charlotte. I was connected to both of them via Bob and Jules, where I helped them prior to coming to Philadelphia. So I have to give them a little bit of a shout out for doing that. We're working with State of Place, which is a data collection and analysis tool that does predictive analytics for urban space. So looking at micro-urban data, which a lot of cities don't actually have. And using that to inform decisions made by our Parks and Recs team, our health department, and our planning department. in kind of this post-COVID space. So, where do we have challenges in terms of if we're requiring people to be 6 feet apart and we have 3 foot wide sidewalks, how do we address that? But also, how do we target groups? How do we address the social inequities around access to public space? So that's been a big kind of current project that we're talking through, and I'm really excited on, because like most cities, communities of color have been hardest hit by COVID, and there's a correlation between that, we think, and access to public space. And so we're really trying to kind of nail that down through data. Good Roads is a project that I'm working on with the Streets Department. It's a device, or it's a device that takes photos of the road and then analyzes when the road will fail, and allows us to do kind of predictive budgeting around that. So what are the roads that are most immediately need to be repaired, and help us with the budgeting, which is great because our streets budget was drastically reduced, and that's also one of the top 3 things that comes up annually. We are doing a streetlight RFQ, which everybody and their brother is doing because of the LED lights and the ability to save funds, but it's also a critical component of the smart city strategy because it allows for opportunities to deploy tech like optical sensors, but also kind of allows for some connectivity. Circular Philadelphia is one that we're doing. I led the Circular Charlotte strategy before I left Envision Charlotte, and I'm looking to do something similar here, where we would do an outcome-based or an evidence-based strategy, and then we're also working with a fund to develop an outcome-based investment fund to help the city meet its climate goals and drive innovation around health outcomes. Global Voices is a translation tool that we're working with the fire department. It's a real-time translation, but a lot of cities have this, but this one actually includes American Sign Language, which is an area we do not have immediate translation capacity. So I'm looking forward to piloting that with them in a couple of their response teams to critical situations. And then the World Economic Forum has invited me to participate in the Smart City manner on some of their working groups to kind of inform them of what we're doing here. So that's exciting on the global sense. Next slide, please. And then last but not least is the impact of COVID and the protest. I just popped up a couple maps because visually it's really helpful in terms of how Philadelphia has been impacted by COVID. You'll notice that a lot of the darker colors are in the north and the west of the city, which is where we largely have our lower income communities and communities of color. And so it's just, again, kind of reinforcing that, that issue in terms of how we should be thinking about it moving forward. The city's been really reactive. We've done a great job. In fact, our positive cases came back yesterday at 67, which is great from where we were a couple of weeks ago. But we now need to pivot to a more proactive response of how we know there's a second wave coming. How are we starting to prepare for that? The COVID and the protests have also amplified existing issues, both internally and externally with the city. Largely around the digital divide. So I'm actually partnering a lot with our digital equity folks to try to increase access to technology. We're putting out calls to companies and partnering with sports teams, hopefully, to put out those calls. But what we realized was internally too, we have a digital divide, and it was an issue we had to very quickly pivot and address when we started to work from home. We didn't have enough computers or laptops rather for people to work from home. So that was a quick procurement challenge. In terms of projects that I'm moving forward, the lens that I'm looking through now is, can multiple departments benefit from this? Or does it have kind of created efficiencies? So like the Good Roads, where we're actually having a better budgeting process so that we're being more precise on our budget requests. It's also pushing forward discussions. We're having massive discussions now around algorithms, AI, bias, data privacy, ethics policies, and what our stance is as a city on that. The protests in terms of surveillance and what we're doing with data. We really want to make sure that we are thinking in an equitable and inclusive way as we develop these policies. And then, another and the last kind of thought is that we are a huge procurement. We have power in our procurement, and so really thinking about, as we're thinking through things like our streetlight RFQ, kind of the diversity of the team, even at the top, is something that we really want to make sure that we're thinking through, because there's power in that, and we want to help facilitate these changes that are necessary. So we're busy. There's a lot of things going on, but that's kind of the tip of the iceberg. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody have. And if you have any more, you can always reach out to me via my email.
That, I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you so much. I could not write fast enough for either of your presentations, but I did start recording at about 2:20, and we will share slides with everyone for folks who are on the call. So I think we're going to lose Rodney in 6 minutes. So let me just open it up for folks who want to ask either Rodney or Emily questions. You'll just unmute yourself and yeah, I also love that power of procurement.
Rodney, this is Greg Sponseller from the city of Raleigh. I had a quick question for you about the streetlight data. Are you using actual streetlights in any way, or is that just the name of the company? Is that right?
That's just the name of the company. They're not using streetlight.
Is that happening through cameras then that you've situated throughout the city, or what kind of hardware are we talking about?
No, this is a subscription service that Streetlight has that ties into how people with mobile devices, the information that they get from their mobile devices.
Hey, Emily.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
I don't know if you can see me or not, but I'll try to get myself on the camera. Okay, a question I have is, can you compare and contrast Philadelphia and using Charlotte as the North Carolina city? Just give us a little bit of a comparison between the two as it relates to smart cities.
Ooh, about putting me on the spot.
That's what I like to do, you know.
In compared to smart cities, so I think they're very different. I think we have different challenges in a way. I think the way the cities are laid out make for different challenges. I think the city structure lays out different challenges, but one of the differences is that while I was there, Rob Focus was the smart city manager and the sustainability manager, so he wore a lot of hats. We have very clear and separated departments here. I'm much more grounded in IT, whereas Rob was not, and I think that led to some challenges in implementation. I think also, we don't have necessarily an innovation district set aside like the city of Charlotte does with their North End Smart District. And I do think there's value in that, and we're kind of having those conversations. We have a similar space called the Navy Yard here, and we're talking with them about potentially designating them as an innovation district to pilot kind of technologies. I mean, for us, it's really important that we are a partner in research and development. We want you to come here and test your technology, and we want to work with you on that. So I think that those are some kind of some differences, I would say.
Thank you.
I had a question for Rodney. Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm.
This is Emily Barrett, the sustainability manager for the town of Cary. And did I hear you say that Greensboro is interested in Lead for Cities, or did I mishear that?
No, you're absolutely right. Greensboro is interested in Leads for Cities, and I think Sergey may be on that. If he's still on the call, I think he's a part of that team as well.
Great, that's good to know. I may be in contact. That program has been in flux, so it's interesting to see when North Carolina cities choose to use it and integrate smart city solutions as well.
Sure.
I have several questions to ask, but I kind of want to pause and let our government folks.
Emily, so I had a couple questions for you, but first one was when you're talking about micro-urban data, can you tell me a little more about what that means and some of the things that you're looking at? I know you gave the sidewalks example, but what are some of the other things that you're examining there, and what opportunities do you see to use that to make some decisions?
So when we say micro-urban data, there's like over 150 data points that they collect through imagery that we have. So we have the Cyclomedia 360-degree imagery and they're using machine visual learning to pull the data, but we're looking at things like quality of crosswalks, curb cuts, where benches are, how far apart are benches, quality, you know, kind of just quality of space, and at a block by block level. And ideally, what I would like to use it for is one of the examples we talked about was there's a program in Philadelphia. I'm going to start saying Charlotte because I'm still getting used to saying Philadelphia over Charlotte. Called Play Streets, where it's been around for 50 years. And we basically shut down one-way streets here in Philadelphia for the summer, and the Parks and Recs gives them a bag of toys to play with, and you have to have a block leader kind of manage it. But it's a process that's very old school. You have to like walk to the city and apply on paper, and we want to kind of make it high tech, but also target certain neighborhoods. So what we're hoping to do is recognize these areas, to identify these areas that need better access to public space, and then actually target them and going out and saying, we have this program, do you want to apply for it, and helping them apply for it. But also then if they get approved, looking at the play space and saying, okay, there's actually no trees. Can we put in temporary trees or permanent trees, and kind of improving the space as well. So just kind of helping make better informed decisions, but also providing data that our health department necessarily doesn't have access to, that can inform their recommendations if we go through another kind of quarantine of sorts or whatnot, in terms of where we're shutting streets down, so that we do provide kind of more walking space and outdoor space to communities that need it. Did that answer your question, Greg?
Yeah, it does. Knowing the number of indicators and how you're using the machine learning, that's really helpful. I would think that there's a lot of different equity components that could be gleaned from that information when you're looking at some of the different areas of the city. So yes, it does. Thank you.
There's a huge amount, and honestly, just the data that we will collect out of that is so foundational to a lot of different efforts. Knight Foundation just gave 2 grants, or 3 grants to some programs here in the city around improving kind of public space and engagement. And when we collect this data at a city scale, because we have, I think, over like 8, I don't even know how many blocks we have, maybe like 25,000 blocks. It's a ridiculous amount because we have such small blocks, but it would better improve those programmings as well. So even just having access to this data will allow us to make such better decisions.
Right.
Thank you.
Let me just, no, go ahead.
Emily, I was just going to ask, this is Darren Smith with the City of Wilson. We had some initial conversation with Good Roads. It definitely seems like a cool solution they've come up with to better assess road conditions and where you have to make improvements or completely replace. I was curious, how far are you already using their technology? Has that been implemented yet?
We've done a few roads to test it out, and then we actually just signed the contract earlier this week. Okay. And so we're moving forward with that. But ultimately, we're doing just, I think we're getting 1,200 miles covered. Do a road assessment, and there are a couple other components that we're having them look at. But then the hope is to scale it up and add additional technology. So I know they're looking for partners to pilot kind of new technologies like LiDAR within the device. And so we're hoping that they can work with us on that.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, they've been great to work with. They're very, they're very flexible. I really like the group, and our streets commissioners are excited for that data right now.
Yeah, we had the same experience. Very good group, and obviously it'd be nice to see them be successful. Yeah,
and we're utilizing our MPO, so we're not spending more than $34K right now to do a pilot with them to get the buy-in, and then scale up is much easier because we already have the technologies on our vehicles and whatnot. So that's really nice.
Absolutely.
I think maybe 2 takeaways are, I know Jules had, we're talking about Good Roads, but I know they had robotics come through the accelerator. That may be a connection we could make for everyone and for City of Wilson. And then maybe Raleigh, you might want to connect with State of Place, which piloted at Innovate Durham. And that's who Emily's talking about. We could make that connection. But I wanted to maybe pause and ask Rodney if you had any parting shots or sage advice before you head off.
No shots or sage advice, just I'm glad to see a lot of communities in here taking smart cities really serious. I know when it first got started, it felt like just a buzzword, but it's really the only way that we can move forward. And I'm glad to see everybody here actually being involved.
Thank you, Rodney. And I got a city council meeting. Thank you very much for your time. All right, we'll return back to questions. While we're talking, I'm going to put a couple of questions on the screen to prompt discussion. But for other folks from government organizations, you know, we'd love to hear what smart cities projects you're also currently working on.
Hey, this is Terry. I just kind of want to chime in. I'm not sure how many folks saw the announcement this week, but we are working on a stormwater project, not only in Cary, but as a region, working with the city of Wilson, city of Raleigh, Wake County, Riot, Cisco, SAS, and various partners. But there was an announcement that and Jennifer can chime in here too, there was an announcement that Microsoft and SAS are partnering together to provide analytics and some smart city solutions. They have been working with us on our smart city effort around stormwater, and we are deploying sensors along a stream bed in our city, as well as rain gauges. And one of the key things around that project is it's fully integrated into our platforms. Esri, we use Esri for visualization. It's fully integrated into that. We use Salesforce for CRM. We're now creating alerts and can create work orders off of those high water level messages. Obviously, SAS for analytics. So we're using these core enterprise platforms. We don't have to use any type of third-party solution, third-party data dashboard to do that, which is really exciting. And we've created the ability to share that data out to our partners because Cary's at the top of 3 stream basins, and we're sharing that data out through a standardized way to the various organizations that we're working with. So really exciting. And I just wanted to kind of mention that as something we're working on.
Yeah, congratulations. It sounds like it was a result of many, many, many regional meetings and a lot of hard work.
Yes.
To kind of piggyback off what Terry said, I know I'm particularly excited to kind of be able to use that project kind of as a model for how we're sharing data in the future. And you know, if this is as successful as we expect it to be, I think that being able to continue to share that information in similar formats is going to be pretty useful.
Yeah, that's a great point.
What about, I know we have Holly Springs and Chapel Hill on the call. Not to put you on the spot, would others like to share smart cities projects? I think we have Wake Forest. Maybe Wake Forest just like. I think part of the challenge is maybe you have projects where you're using data, but we're not not calling them smart cities projects.
This is Anna with Holly Springs. We did work with Terry in that group with the stormwater sensors, and we did deploy one over one of our streams, and we have a dashboard that that some of our engineers look at and our fire station looks at, because we do have some road overtopping with water, and so it allows us to see once it gets to a certain point if that road is going to be flooded, and then we can deploy either fire or police just to shut down the road or to redirect traffic. So that's been really helpful, and we, for this new budget, do have money for more sensors for different areas of town, because of the interest in that. We are not currently sharing the data necessarily, but are open to it, is what I've been told. And I was trying to think of one other thing. Oh, we do have also, this was not something that I was a part of, but I know that the town has done, is the water meters. And those being, I guess, electronic. They're, we're not having someone go out and check every single one, but they're able to get the data automatically. And that's been really helpful to cut down on staff time.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that, Anna.
And Susan, this is Jim from City of Raleigh. Just a couple of projects. I don't see Noah on, so I'll kind of report back on the city. We have a machine learning kind of project pilot along Wilmington Street in downtown, where we're attempting to use our traffic cameras to do machine learning to get traffic movement counts to help us get a better understanding of traffic flows around the city. That's in kind of, we're finishing up a pilot now and then looking at scaling that to all of our cameras around the city. So that's one. Two is we have 2 or 3 projects in what we're calling the digital twin space. So this is trying to create digital sandboxes, both from an urban design perspective. So that's the built environment, as a way to allow developers, planners, urban designers to have a place to do scenario development, change zoning, etc., and not only see what it will affect visually, but potentially look at some indicators around jobs, employment, traffic, etc. And then kind of a sidebar to that is starting to look at interior spaces. We were actually doing this a little bit ahead of the COVID-19, and there's a little bit of pressure to accelerate that to do some interior space planning, but starting to look at a digital twin from an indoor perspective. And then the last one is just really trying to get a real handle on real-time data. So mostly, you were talking about AVL, but all of our AVL solutions, scooters, bikes, we have some eco counters, buses, all of these sensors around the city, and just making sure that we're dealing with them in a kind of very constructive way so that we can start to look across this data to gain intelligence and knowledge for some of the businesses.
That's a lot. That's great. Thanks, Jim. The digital twin work, or would you like to share some of the partners you're working with, or kind of?
Sure. So we partner pretty closely with Esri. So we're using kind of 2 of their products in this space, urban and indoors. We're also looking at potentially partnering with other partners like Cisco, et cetera, around leveraging sensors within the indoor space to start to get a sense of where people are going, what they're doing, are they violating potentially safe distance constraints, et cetera, those sorts of things. But that's very, very early on. Esri is kind of the partner on the pilot itself. That's
great. I just wonder if some of our other local government folks are interested in that. That was a huge topic at Smart Cities Connect last year. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Oh, one question, and you all, if you have questions, or Town of Chapel Hill, Scott, if you want to chime in, please interrupt me. I wanted to ask Emily if you could share a little bit about Smart Cities Council, which is part of the town of Cary's journey and helping them with that Readiness Challenge grant. Terry, was that 2018, I think?
Yes.
And we've all benefited in the region because Cary received that grant. Emily, maybe you could tell us a little bit how Smart Cities Council has helped Philadelphia. And then I have a follow-up question. There is a grant cycle that's going to be opening up probably in the 3rd quarter. and potentially we could apply as a region, coalescing around a particular smart cities idea. But I'll stop talking. Emily, any thoughts you want to share?
I can't speak totally. I can tell you what I've been told, but I clearly wasn't here for that process. But from what I understand, they were just a really solid resource, and it was helpful to have the funding to help be able to convene those groups. But I know that since I've started in this role, just kind of having them as a resource, their website and kind of their connectivity to other cities and support of smart city projects has been really, really helpful. Sorry, I wish I could answer more, but
that's okay. No, thank you. I think, Terry, I don't know if you want to chime in about the Smart Cities Council and them helping the town come up with priorities and a roadmap, or what about?
Hey, sorry guys, I was muted. Yeah, I would have to echo the other Yates in the house about it was a great I think it was a great mechanism to convene everyone, to get everyone on the same page and really to identify the priorities and the projects and solidify what we're trying to accomplish. Not only as from Carrie's standpoint, but from a regional standpoint. It's really exciting about creating I know Jim and I have talked a lot about creating the data dictionary, the data Bible, the regional data Bible. And so we're all on the same page because a lot of it is around sharing data. And, that whole effort was really kind of got everybody together, got everybody excited, and really kind of helped us set the stage to do these kind of regional projects and innovative projects. So
yeah.
I think it was a great mechanism.
I was going to say, to echo, the consensus building that they helped support here in Philadelphia, from what I understand, was critical to having a successful launch of this process.
That's good to know. Thanks for that. We've had some introductory initial conversations with the council about potentially what if we as a region wanted to submit an application, and they seem very open to that. What about, can others share, and certainly industry, you all chime in as well, if you've seen this from some of your customers, like how are smart cities priorities changing, with the pandemic? Have you noticed any new priorities or more urgent priorities? You mentioned digital equity, equity in public spaces, but what new opportunities are arising for you?
Hey, this is Terry again, and I think I mentioned this on one of the last calls, and I think it's important because Jim was mentioning taking mobility, the data around mobility. I was working in our I'm still working in our emergency operations center, but kind of in the thick of things, we were getting calls about crowds and usage of our parks and greenways through our 311 center, and we took the eco counters that we have and we redeployed them in those areas, and then we were able to take the data from that and take the 311 data and really see, do we need to send, let's say, an officer out there just to educate, not to get anybody in trouble, but just to educate. And I think that's that was kind of an area where we were looking at, with this whole event, something where we use the smart city technology and the data from that to make actionable decisions.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Oops. Any others, or even from industry that you're seeing?
So this is Jim again. one of the things I think we're all aware of is some of the industry stance on facial recognition, which kind of leads into that whole space of data security, privacy, surveillance, etc. And so even when we start talking about mobility data, there is a surveillance component of that that we're just aware of and we're sensitive to, and we're just trying to audit kind of how we're doing things and any projects that we have in the pipeline, kind of looking at it through that lens to make sure we're sensitive and including the right people in the conversation, whether that be on the legal side or on the community side, you know, just tracking that conversation, not only within Raleigh, but like around the country.
Thanks, Jim. It's good to hear our, you know, city I live in is sensitive to that. That's fantastic. Great leadership. What about, you know, speaking to this last question, if we just sort of put budgets aside, I know which is unrealistic, but just for the sake of brainstorming, you know, is there a smart city solution that you have talked about or that you would like to deploy if you had all the resources in the world? Sort of, what would you put at the top of your list?
This is Greg in Raleigh. I think, you know, right now, I think air quality sensors throughout the city. I know that we don't have localized air quality data. I know that's something that we've been paying attention to with regards to transportation, but being able to have, you know, a before and after COVID-19 would have been particularly interesting, especially in different areas of town. And then we have some different strategic plan initiatives associated with tree canopies and water quality, and being able, I think, to measure those things in discrete locations over the city would also be useful. But I'd love to dig into a little bit more of what Emily has done with the machine learning and the video data to get some of those micro-urban indicators to see what we might be able to do with regards to equity. And trying, especially when, you know, people are stuck at home and they can't use public spaces, how can we make sure that the public spaces that are accessible to some of these different communities have the amenities that they require?
Yeah, thanks for that. Those are great. I want to say those are two items that we can follow up on. I think that Itron has piloted air quality sensors in city of San Antonio. I don't want to speak out of school because that's about all I know about that, but okay, that's something for us to follow up on.
Yeah, but similarly, like how we're handling the stormwater stuff, you know, I think that would be interesting as we continue to look at transportation electrification, as we're looking at different areas. We've been using some of the annual average daily traffic count data, and our logic is that if there are more vehicles in that area, there are more tailpipe emissions, so the air quality is going to be poor. But I can't really like verify that. I would like to do that.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for elaborating on that. And then the micro-urban indicators, we could certainly, anyway, you and Emily can talk offline, and we could potentially also have State of Place do a presentation for this whole group for anybody who's interested. Thanks, Cisco. Jim has shared a link. Others, kind of top of your list, pie in the sky, smart city solution you wish you could deliver?
Susan, this is Jim. I did just drop the link into Cisco's annual networking trends report. Mm-hmm. We just posted Cisco Live yesterday and the day before, had a huge audience to a virtual event. And so I think beyond cities and just public sector, clearly COVID has given us all a lot of interesting opportunities, as Emily Yates mentioned, as we're trying to virtualize workspaces. Mm-hmm. And we're trying to secure those virtual workspaces. And we're seeing that there's renewed interest in technologies like we've been using in courts for years for virtualized court appearances. that now those same technologies might be used for things as different as doing virtual building inspections or delivering social services over same kind of platforms, because I don't know when we're going back to normal. I think it's going to be a next normal, not the normal of the past.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. And I think, that topic came up about virtual inspections on our last call. I want to say maybe Carrie, and maybe it's a Cisco solution, is piloting or is doing some of that. Emily, is there anything else you want to share that's at the top of the City of Philadelphia's list?
No, I mean, it's just funny to see the similarities, right? We are trying to explore the possibility of doing kind of a micro scale air quality air monitoring project as well, to just align again with COVID and provide connectivity to health services. So allow for tracking and contact tracing, but also kind of notifications of it's a bad air day. You might have some issues as you recover from COVID, whatnot. But I just, I'd love if anybody wants to reach out and talk to me more about some stuff, but also I really think that this algorithm, this bias, this AI conversation, we're really early on in our conversations around that. So if anybody has resources, I would just put out and ask to the group, please send them my way. I'm kind of doing like the whole, pull in as much resources as I can, because we want to have those policies in place before we really dive into some of those technologies. And it'll be quick that we dive into them, so.
That's great. Tammy, I know you just shared a link about Itron and the ecosystem of partners. Can you, instead of me fumbling it, can you just share the air quality solution? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's okay, Susan. Yeah, I was just trying to share. I was trying to quickly find some of our information on the air quality monitoring demonstrations and deployments that we have going on around different places. AirQual is one of our partners. I mean, we're open, have an open ecosystem. We'll work with any partner, but the link that I put in here has a list at the bottom of some of our different types of partners, which is easy to click on. So if anybody's interested, we've also got cities that we can, tell you if you'd like to talk to these cities about their experience. We can definitely hook you up with that. I know Avista and the city of Spokane, Washington is one of those that has air quality sensors deployed. I'm sure there's others. I've got some other people here on the line from Itron that I'm probably forgetting some of the cities, but if they can drop them into the chat window, that would be helpful. So yeah, we've got lots of partners on air quality for sure. If anybody would like to discuss that more.
Thanks for sharing that. I think San Antonio might be one. That's where I learned about it. But that sounds like that could be a follow-up item for us to maybe bring a city who's deployed air quality back to this group for just to share some best practices. Any other government folks or even utilities or industry folks want to share burning last thoughts on trends or needs? What we'll do is we'll send out a list of the folks who are on the call and then the slides. Emily, thank you very much. Just some random best practices I think I heard was Rodney talking about having a head count to work with service providers. Philadelphia having a digital equity team, and kind of this whole idea about having a governance structure to manage smart cities and pitching and proposals, which I know Town of Cary has done well. Anyway, I think we have follow-up items on air quality around the microurban data. If you think of other things that RTCC can do to connect you to peers or solutions, let us know. I want to just share 2 opportunities we have coming up. Next week, Centralina, COG, and TJ COG and RTCC are partnering on an autonomous vehicles webinar. I think Cisco, Josh Dodson is speaking. And then July 8th, Bob, I don't know if you're still here, Jules Cohort 6 is graduating, and we'd love to have you join to learn about some of those technologies. I will stop sharing so I can see everyone's face. And that is what we have for today. So if you have other ideas, please let us know, and just thank you again for your feedback today around smart cities. So thanks, especially Emily.
Of course, thank you. That was great.
All right, have a good afternoon, folks.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to both the cities for presenting.
Thanks, Tammy.